everybody? Welcome back for another episode of The Cut. I'm your host, Christian Williams, and I'm here as always with Randy Hall. Randy, how are you, man?
Doing good. Nice, fun, relaxing gaming session before this. Unfortunately, watched the Cavs lose, but
Yeah,
glad
that
to
was
be
a draw.
back. Glad to start off the off season. Feels like the right way with the mock draft. Start
Yeah,
talking a little bit about a couple of these guys, and full steam ahead after that.
yeah. We're getting into heavy draft season. We did take obviously a pretty much a month of hiatus after the fantasy season, much needed this year for both of us, I think. But we are back, ready to go, ready to talk about the draft. And like Randy said, what better way to kick it off than with an NFL mock draft? We normally, kind of ease into this because we want to, watch some more guys, but this feels like the right time to do a mock draft. There are a lot of mock drafts going around. There's a lot of hype being thrown around for a lot of these guys. So we're going to get into it. Before we do that, thoughts on the games this weekend, the conference championships. Who are your picks? How do you think this Mahomes injury is going to play out? Because I think that's the most compelling storyline.
I think we saw a little bit of how it's going to play out. Second half of that game where Mahomes is back in, but we know he's not really mobile. He's heavily limping. That's off of a ton of adrenaline, obviously. I think we have a similar situation coming into this week. Obviously, a little bit more ginger in the situation going in instead. But I think he's playing. I think he'll be able to sit in the pocket and move the ball. The issue is last week the Bengals were blitzing with very exotic packages, and I think they're going to be able to get to Mahomes. So if they can play some press coverage and stop Kelsey from getting open quick, it'll be a very tough game for that Chiefs offense. I think they might try and lean on that running game a bit more and quick out to McKinnon. So we'll go from there. But I think I'm still going to pick the Bengals. They seem to have their number. At this point, that's who I would root for on the AFC side. So
Yeah. Yeah, Eli Apple's making that really tough on Twitter
I just,
today.
I've never really concerned myself with Eli Apple.
That's fair.
So
That's fair. And he's bad at football, if I'm being completely honest. But the Bengals are here. I think Pacheco is probably gonna have a decent day. I think if the Bills had any sort of running game, they would have had a more successful day on offense, but they refused to kind of invest in that, or they invested in it, but improperly, with James Cook, who, he couldn't even find his footing for most of the game. So bummer for the Bills. I think being a Super Bowl or bust team, having those expectations is fun until it comes to an end. And I think mostly Bills and Cowboys fans are taking it the hardest. Cowboys, different situation. The Tony Pollard injury really freaking sucks for this offseason. And we're going to talk about that a little bit as we get down to some of these picks in this mock draft. But Cowboys are in a tough situation. I think there's a lot of discourse about Dak Prescott. I don't think it's really warranted because I think people are walking out of that game thinking, well, he didn't play very well. Well, no one expected a great game, I don't think, out of him. I think they expected better. Um, but yeah. And then Brock Purdy, do you think that he can keep this going, man? So some background. Rookie quarterbacks in conference championship games have been atrocious in the history of the NFL. So do you think the magic lives on?
I think there's a really good chance simply because the magic really doesn't come from him. Um, and
Good take.
we've gone over it more. I think personally over the last few weeks, just watching the games where yeah, he's made some really good safe throws, but he's down the field. He's made some really atrocious throws that have kind of worked out, not really to his doing, and it's more of just lucky or a bad angle by a safety. And so there's a few things that he's definitely not clicking on, but if he's just dumping it short to those athletes and they're able to run the ball, which they're still going to be able to run the ball, yeah, he definitely has a chance. But this is going to be a really tough matchup. The the Eagles are tough against the run. They're tough against the short passes. They get to you. Their secondary is healthy, which it hasn't been for the last stretch of the year. But they got Gardner Johnson back, and it's going to be a tough one, man. I think I'm going Eagles here, simply because I would rather watch a Bengals Eagles game.
Sure. In that matchup, hypothetically for Ohioans and bettors out there, Would you take the Eagles over the Bengals in that situation?
No, simply to spite Adam though. But yeah, I definitely take the Bengals. The Bengals are a likable team. You know, we're from Ohio. It's not going to be, you know. I think at this point, Christian would rather root for them. But
Yeah, for
that's
sure.
necessarily what I'm doing. But it's a bunch of likable guys, and they're doing stuff. They built it kind of differently in the right way, and they play a fun brand of football. Not to say that the Eagles don't, though, and the Eagles have some studs on their side as well. That's why I'd rather I'd rather have a chance at a 38-35 Super Bowl than almost guaranteed of 17-20.
Yeah.
So
No, I hear you there. I tried really hard to dislike Joe Burrow, and it's impossible.
it is.
That dude is so drippy. He's got so much swag. That slow mo video of him throwing and spinning in pregame against the Bills. I should have cashed out my bet on the Bills as soon as I saw that. I should have known. I should have known. Um, okay, that's how I feel too. I think Eagles Bengals is the most ideal Super Bowl matchup.
Yeah,
They're both the favorites right now too. So.
yeah. I do think both games are toss ups though, so it should be a fun weekend of football, and we'll go from there.
Yeah,
I know we're going to be betting on it, Christian, a lot more than me because
because
no legal gambling here.
yep, yep.
Ridiculous.
Well, the Bills kind of made betting a lot less fun last weekend, but that's okay because we're gonna give them some tools to fix their problems in this NFL mock draft. We are gonna go through 32 picks. There are only 31 technically in the first round, but for the sake of picking 32 picks, the Steelers are gonna squeak their way into the back of this round here, mostly because we wanted even numbers of picks. And Randy just typed the Steelers in. I got the odds. I know Randy got the evens. And so I get to pick for the Bears, which, Randy alluded to it. Kind of my new favorite team. Pretty invested in the Bears. Listen to some Bears podcasts too. And I have been, obviously the Bears they're going to trade this pick if there is a good offer. I think that it's kind of known that that's what they're trying to do because there are QB needy teams here in the top 10. Um, quick question before we start going over the pick. What's the lowest you would go if you were the Bears in a trade back?
Like the lowest number down,
Yeah. I
9.
know it. Okay. Now, depending on the haul, I think if you get just a crazy, crazy offer, I'd go down that far.
Yeah,
If I'm
obviously.
the Bears, I'd love to stay in the top 4 and make sure you get Jalen Carter or Will Anderson.
Yeah, I think that's the most ideal situation, but a lot of it, people aren't talking enough about. Hey, what if Colts trade up from at 4, take their guy? It's the guy the Texans want. Are the Texans then just picking their second quarterback, or are they picking one of the top 2 players of the draft? I think that's a little bit more likely. I
Yeah.
think this is definitely a draft of people ranking these top 4 a lot of different ways, and we'll see how that pans out. But it's definitely, I think the Bears have to trade back personally, just because their team has so many holes, and that's why going down to 9 would give you, I mean, at least 2 firsts, at least 2 seconds, if and maybe a player or some later compensation this year. Even like
Yeah.
you're getting a haul to go down that far for a quarterback as well. Are you getting one of the top 2 players? No, but then you're falling down a little bit. You're going to that second tier edge rusher, the second tier D tackle, first tier offensive lineman, first tier receiver. Like you're changing the game to where you need to, where they're just a weird situation that they really. I mean, you have your quarterback, you have to re-sign your running back. You
Mm.
don't really have a guaranteed wide receiver 1. I'm not even going to say you have a locked in guaranteed tight end. Your
Yeah.
defense is locked into everyone being gone. So, like, you got so many holes, you can't really be picky necessarily. But I think the least you're taking is to go down to 2 and maybe like 2/3. I think that's the lowest I would take to move.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't see that as a super likely scenario. But I guess I could see it because if the Texans do narrow down to one quarterback. So enough of this, I guess. I'll just give my pick. I went with Will Anderson, the edge rusher out of Alabama. With this one, I think that there's a real chance that they value Jalen Carter over Will Anderson because of his Jalen Carter's ability to rush the passer, but also provide good run defense. Where Will Anderson does that well too, but Matt Eberflus has talked about the importance of the three tech in this defensive scheme. They don't have one right now. That said, I think a trade down scenario is to go get DeForest Buckner in the fourth overall pick and then sprinkle in some other picks. And then it is, I think you'd have to give some picks in that scenario. But like,
Not
I think
necessarily, but
Buckner's getting a little old. The Colts are kind of in a weird position. But like, I think that there are scenarios where the Bears fill their three tech hole and still don't have a really good, really any pass rush. They generated very little QB pressures last year. And so I think Will Anderson makes some sense. He's not really the ideal size for the Eberflus edge rusher, but him and Jalen Carter are a tier above every player in this class for me, including the quarterbacks. So I don't think you can go wrong with either one of them.
I wouldn't say they're tier above every player, but we won't talk about that other player for a while. But yeah, I think he's the
Oh
perfect
yeah,
pick. He might
that's
not be
fair.
the best fit for this team, but he's the best talent for this team. And if you're a defensive coach that can't plan around having a guy like this, and maybe then working to get more of your scheme fit edge on the opposite side to kind of counterbalance that, I think you're probably not going to be a defensive coordinator for a while after
Yeah,
that. So moving to the Texans, they're not trading up. No trades in this. I do think the next one we do with these, we'll probably have trades. It's
yeah.
just getting.
First
This
one.
is a lot more about getting kind of looks at what the teams might be going for and getting these names out to people that haven't seen them or
Yeah,
listening a little bit more than just reading. But two here for the Texans, Bryce Young, quarterback Alabama. You're just going to keep hearing it. He's been the most consistent quarterback at all facets of the game, all college season. He's going to go he's probably going to go number one. He's probably going to be the first quarterback off the board. I think he's going to be both of ours QB1s. I'm not quite sure. Christian might give him -11 for size. I really don't know anymore. So we'll go from there. But he really does everything well. He's not a run first quarterback by any means. He does have size concerns. Those are legitimate. There really is no comparison to his body size in the NFL at the quarterback level. You'll hear people say Kyler or Russ. He doesn't have kind of the stature of them, the stockiness of them to really back up the hits. And if we're talking about it, both have been injured in this career. Kyler a lot more. So there's not really an ideal situation. He is kind of a unicorn in that sense.
yeah,
But I do think he can be a good quarterback in the future. But it's the Texans. They really don't have weapons. They don't have much. So
yeah,
we'll get on that, I guess.
yeah. My thoughts on Bryce Young. Bryce Young is a really difficult evaluation because on one hand, he's probably the smartest football player in this class. Just he throws with anticipation. He sees the field better than really anyone, by far anyone, and including CJ Stroud, who I think does see this field pretty well. We've seen him take massive hits from SEC defenders and pop right back up. Someone compared him. I don't remember which podcast I was listening to, but they said he can be the Steph Curry of the NFL and bring in a new age of quarterbacking where it's a finesse type of situation. That's his favorite athlete. I get it. He's kind of small and he's got to do things that are a little different, like Steph shooting from half court. Bryce, I, I don't have Rice as my QB1 currently though, because I want to see if he's 5'10 and a half or if he's 5'11. And really that doesn't matter that much. But I know he's not 6 foot. So that's a problem, I think. And I think that he may get knocked by NFL teams for that.
Yeah, and he's gonna have a weird. We'll move on quickly after this, but he's gonna have a weird offseason process because he's gonna come to the combine. He'll probably get measured, and he'll probably weigh in, and he'll probably bulk up to like 201, and then he's not gonna do shit else until his
Yep.
pro day, where he's gonna be back down to 185, 180, still be the same size, and then throw really well because it's a pro day. So it's gonna be a weird thing. He's going to try and check the, no
He's
pun
going to be
intended,
so fat.
minuscule boxes that he's going to at the combine. and
Yeah.
then move on. Because at this point, he doesn't have to prove much in that level besides his size, where the
Yeah.
other guys might. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Bryce is a good quarterback. We'll talk about him a lot this offseason. Moving on to 3, I had the Arizona Cardinals here. Once again, no trades. I took Miles Murphy, the edge out of Clemson. It's a little early, obviously. I think Miles Murphy is going to have a really good pre-draft process, though. Uh, Miles Murphy is an incredibly powerful dude. He's got speed to power. He's got a good repertoire of moves in his toolbox. Um, I think he kind of got overshadowed by all of the players on the Clemson defensive line. But as you go back and watch his tape, you realize, oh, he's still the same player. He can still be a dominant edge rusher. The Cardinals probably go a different direction here. I just think if they're taking edge, they would go Miles Murphy.
yeah, I had a little debate when you did this where I thought they might like Tyree Wilson better.
I
Um,
get it. And I thought
Also,
about it.
Jalen Carter is on the board.
I
So,
know.
but it is the Cardinals, and while they do have a new regime there, we can't guarantee that they're also not stupid. So, Miles Murphy, like you said, he kind of got blended into the Clemson defensive line. I think they all had that issue because they're all very good and they all moved around a good amount as well. So
Yeah.
there's just a big mix of guys there, and that's why you hear guys like Brian Brzee moving up and down the draft board right now because people don't know where he's supposed to fit in and they didn't see enough in certain positions. And
Yeah.
we've seen that a lot for the last few years. So people being moved around a lot, and some guys it's the best thing in the world, and some guys everyone hates it, which that's what you're going
Yeah.
to get in this kind of process. Colts at number 4, Will Levis, quarterback, Kentucky. Uh, Colts fans
Boo.
hate this, bro.
They should.
But this is what they're picking. I
I
don't know
know.
what to tell you. To me, this team fits better with CJ Stroud. I think it fits better with Bryce Young as well. I
Yep.
don't think Anthony Richardson is a better fit than Will Levis for this team, but
No.
he is the height, weight, speed that the Colts love.
Yep.
Uh, and I don't know what to tell you. I just think they're going to see a more developmental piece in him than they will for CJ. And I think that's going to be the ceiling comps are going to be what they're going to be salivating over.
Yeah.
Him throwing deep to Michael Pittman and no one else on that team. Basically, I mean, they have some pieces. I'll be
Alec Pierce.
respectful, but
Alec
like
Pierce can be a good player.
the team needs to
Paris
step up
Campbell's
a
a free
lot.
agent. Yeah, they do.
But I will say, I think Levis will be able to work slightly better in the type of pocket that the Colts will probably be dealing with this next year than CJ Stroud would off the bat. So I'll
Yeah.
give him that at least. But you're going to hear Will Levis to the Colts a ton. You're seeing in mocks them trading to one and taking Will Levis. It's what you're going to hear from now till April until we hear more stuff.
Yep. I have thoughts on Will Levis. I think he's got a shot to be a good player. I just think
Yeah.
it's tough for me to invest in a developmental quarterback that's coming off of his 5th year in college and really didn't have a super productive season ever. I would argue he was fine. Um, it's just some of the decision making is really, really questionable. Some of the lack of mechanical consistencies. He masked it. He's got a bazooka, and that's what teams love. So I think you're right. I think he probably will be QB1 or 2 off the board if I had to bet right now.
Yep.
All right, number 5, the Seahawks. This is their pick from the Russell Wilson trade with the Broncos, and I gave them Jalen Carter, the defensive tackle out of Georgia. Listen, I think Seattle is in a really good spot. I think they've got assets everywhere, and they also have a second first-round pick to kind of play around with. They could go their quarterback of the future here if they wanted, but I think they are invested in Geno. A talent like Jalen Carter, you don't let slip past 5, I don't think, because he's my number 1 player. He's number 1 on my big board. If he's here at 5, I think the Seahawks are smart and take him.
Yeah, I definitely understand that.
Yeah.
It's just like, how is he here at 5 kind of situation. But the Seahawks really haven't had like elite D tackle play for a long time. So this is going to absolutely revamp that interior, really help out their edge rushers who have been okay at best. A little bit improved this year. I'll give them some credit,
Yeah.
but it really helped the defense and its totality. So good move there.
Quick question for you. Think back to the Quinnen Williams draft. Would you have ranked Jalen Carter over Quinnen Williams? I know we didn't have our system set up for the Quinnen Williams draft, but do you remember how dominant Quinnen was?
I
He
would
was,
have Quinnen over, I think. Quinnen was a little bit more of an impactful three down, like 80% of the game D tackle, and we haven't really seen that fully from Jalen Carter.
yeah, I think that's fair.
But
I
Georgia doesn't really ask its D tackles of that.
Yeah, they
So,
don't. They just rotate dudes because they've got dudes everywhere. So,
yeah.
okay, sorry, I just want to ask that.
Yeah, no, it's a valid question because that's the caliber we're talking about here.
Yeah.
So, number 6, the Lions, their pick from the Rams, the Matthew Stafford trade, Tyree Wilson, edge rusher from Texas Tech. They have lucked out with Pascal and Houston, really stepping up this year at edge rusher, but they're not ones or twos. They are rotational guys. I think they can really help out a ton. And they have been moving. They moved Aiden around a little bit as well, so that does give you a little bit more room to move him in inside at different times and put someone else in. But they need a dominant number 2 opposite of Aiden to really help him out to maximize his potential in this league. So Tyree Wilson, a little bit of an upside guy as well, but he definitely has a pretty high ceiling here that I think he's a lot closer than people have given him credit to for so far. Obviously, still early in the process, so I'll reserve a little bit of judgment here, but I think he would be a really good scheme fit for them as well because he does do a little bit of hand in the dirt, a little bit just stand up, so that's perfect for them. And I think Lions, it's hard not to pick the type of character guys that they're going to like, and
Mm-hmm.
that's usually who I give them, and I think Tyree really fits.
Yeah. So that's a good way to battle Aiden's lack of length is go
Yes.
get this guy that's extremely long. And then in Pascal's super long too. So I think that just makes for a pretty terrifying defensive line. I think that's a good pick. Number 7, the Raiders pick here. I don't know what the Raiders are doing just as an organization in general, but I do know that they haven't really done something like this in a long time. So I gave them CJ Stroud, quarterback from Ohio State. I think with the weapons around their quarterback, whoever their quarterback is, that person is set up to succeed. I think obviously you have to invest in the offensive line. I think you have to go make that happen. However, they need a reset. Clearly, they're moving on from Carr, which is a bummer. I don't think they should. But it's time. CJ Stroud, he's my QB1 currently. That's not final. But I do think that there's a tier of him and Bryce together, and then there's the drop off. So this is a good value for them.
Yeah, I do think I think I'm gonna have the grades the same way, where it's gonna be them two together, and then Levis and Richardson together, and then
And then everyone else,
replacement caliber guys.
pretty
I think
much.
that's what we're going with. So, in the nicest way we can.
Yeah.
um, and the only quarterback I have fully graded as of right now is Richardson, and he is just at the NFL starter grade. So, if that's just kind of telling you, and that's some upside projection in there as well, I would say, but with traits being a decent part of our system. So I think Stroud is a phenomenal pick for the Raiders. If they keep that offense intact, you still have to do so much work on that offensive line. I think there's been some upside plays this year at guard. I think center played well above their pay grade. Right tackle, still nothing. Miller's really playing out of his mind to left tackle, but he needs help. That whole offensive line needs a lot of help, even if it's just continuity and just getting another guy at the bookend tackle position. Stroud needs that. So,
Yeah. Yep.
8 Falcons are a weird pick. I think they would really like edge rusher. I think they really like D tackle. I think they would really like corner. In theory, they would like a wide receiver, but we clearly not for what they do on offense. So I went offensive line, and what many people are saying is the best offensive lineman in the class. A little bit of versatility as well. Peter Skoronski, some length concerns, which is again
I don't care about it.
I care about it to some extent. Um,
I care
what
about it a
I
little bit.
do not care for is how much we're going to hear. What Rashawn Slater had shorter arms, and they both went to Northwest. It's the helmet scouting, and it pisses me off. I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
you're going to hear it a few times. They're not the same player. They're not the same caliber of player, in my opinion. But Skronsky is a very talented offensive lineman. I do think he could play tackle at the next level. That's not necessarily the Falcons' immediate need, but I think he can easily give them the best five out there if he's playing interior or on tackle.
Yeah. No, I like Skronsky, and I think you're right that that versatility is something that I think an Arthur Smith offense is going to want too. So good pick. I think this is. I think the Falcons do take offensive line in some form or fashion. For some reason, it's just a pick that makes sense to me.
Yeah, right now I'm leaning offensive line or corner.
Yeah,
Those are my two.
yeah. I've mocked a couple corners there in my simulator playing. Okay, number 9, the Panthers. There's some debate over where this player is going to go. I don't think he gets out of the top 10. Anthony Richardson, quarterback out of Florida. I don't know how the NFL looks at even what Justin Fields did this year and says, I don't want a player like that. I don't want a player that can change the way teams play defense. Anthony Richardson is that type of player. I understand he is very much so a project. From a mechanical standpoint, he is flawed right now. And I say flawed, he's not actually that flawed. It's just very inconsistent. He oftentimes just gets out of whack. If he gets a good quarterback coach and he gets a good situation, which I think the Panthers are kind of low key a good situation, I think that he has potential to be the best quarterback in this class. So Anthony Richardson here. The Panthers have to do something like this. I really don't know how they don't leave this top 10 with a quarterback after all of the times they've passed on guys in the last few years. Unless all
Yeah,
4 of them are gone before this, I guess.
yeah, but I think there's a good amount of them trying to trade up, um, and I think if if you're not willing to make that Godfather offer to get up to one, or even three to an extent, or something like that, sitting back at 9, or maybe even trading up to 6, does give you the advantage of getting the QB 3 or 4, and that doesn't necessarily take you out of the race to get one of these veteran quarterbacks. I don't know if it's a guy that you're viewing as a 3-year starter, might just be a 1-year guy. Um, and then you just kind of give the reins to Richardson, who I do think would really, really benefit from a full year sitting, just to
Agreed.
kind of work on his mechanics for a full year. To be honest with you, consistent mechanics, like Christian went on. There is some tiny mechanic issues that I think you can pick up on and see that he clearly needs to fix, but a lot of it is just kind of speeding up at times. It really messes with his mechanics, and the game speeds up at the next level already. So I am a little worried about him playing right off the bat, but
Agreed.
we'll see. I would be more comfortable with him playing off the bat than I was for pretty much every quarterback last year.
I would argue he's better than every quarterback from last year.
I think he is. I'm just there's a couple in there like
Howell's
Hal, I
close.
would have been fine playing week 1. You know what I mean? Even though I think Richardson probably, I think I'll probably have Hal higher, I'd say.
Yeah.
But like I'd feel more comfortable with that style of guy in that where he landed playing right away. Whereas Richardson in this system, I think he would be fine. I think he would do better than the quarterbacks they had this year.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be an automatic upgrade. But even if it's a guy like Mariota to just ink along the system for a little bit, I don't think it's the worst case scenario.
Yeah. For sure. All right. You're up at 10.
I'm evens. That's right. Eagles at 10, the pick from New Orleans, which this was a trade last year that the Saints traded up for Chris Olave, so it worked out, and also
Even.
kind of a bad trade. But the Eagles get Christian Gonzalez, the cornerback from Oregon, for me. I don't think Bradbury returns to this team. I think they really need a cornerback 2 and eventual cornerback 1 of this team to replace Slay in a couple of years. I think he is the perfect pick for this kind of defense as well, with size, height, weight, speed. I guess that's the best way to put that. And he is the best cornerback for me right now. We'll finish that process and we'll go from there. But just from I kind of scattered. I kind of shotgun splatted the cornerback class and looked at like 10, and I liked what I saw from him the most. We'll get to the second guy in a little bit here. Me and Christian already talked about it off air a little bit, so we'll
Mhm.
see on that. But
Yeah.
I do think he is a little bit more of the most complete corner of this class, but there's other guys that do stuff better. So
I have thoughts on Christian Gonzalez. I think the play over the back half of the year definitely improved his grade for me. The play at the beginning of the year and even last year, I mean, he improved a lot from last year. I, he's gonna go first out of these corners, I think. Maybe not, I guess, because of what we're alluding to that we'll get to here in a little bit. But it's just
I
really tough to teach that height, weight, speed, and he's gonna run like a 4.3 something. He is fast.
I still think he goes first, even with the hype. But we'll get there.
We'll get there. All right. Number 11, the Tennessee Titans are picking here. I gave them Broderick Jones, the offensive tackle from Georgia. Most Titans fans are going to tell you that they have a lot of needs. They need wide receiver. They need a ton on defense. But I would argue that Taylor Lewan is not going to be back. They're going to cut him. He's actually said
He
that.
would argue that.
He knows that's happening. So I don't know if conversations have been had. It doesn't really matter. They need a left tackle of the future. They need a right tackle right now too. Really, any way you spin it, they need an offensive lineman. Broderick Jones is my OT1 right now. I think from a size athleticism combination standpoint, he has the highest upside. He has one of the highest grades of any offensive tackle that I've graded in a long time. I think consistency is a problem. I think he can tend to get out of whack when he is in a straight drop back game. But this dude is a mauler, and Randy knows how much I like guys like that. When you get this guy out in space, he's arguably like Mekhi Becton was when he was coming out in space, and he's already a more refined pass blocker. So I love Broderick Jones. The way he's, dude, if you watch the All 22, it doesn't make sense how like cut he is in his like uniform. Normally the offensive tackles like this are a little thick. He's not. He just like comes down. He's got a
He's
whole,
Evan Neal.
yes, except yeah, no, it's the
Yeah,
same.
yeah,
It's
it's
the
the
same.
same. And I think it's the same kind of player as well.
Yeah,
I think Neal coming out is a better pass blocker, and I think Jones is a better run blocker coming out. So
that's fair.
not the same. It's a little bit more of a Seattle tackle, but whatever.
Yeah.
For me, it's a weird thing because I think for their situation, Paris Johnson for me makes the most sense because he can play both sides, he can play inside. But for the
True.
team, not the
Yeah.
situation the team's in, but for the team, Broderick Jones makes the most sense because he's a mauler. He can help with that run game day one, no matter where he's playing. So I think it's the right pick, but I just wanted to point it out why other people might like Paris a little bit better.
For sure.
Going to 12, the Texans for the trade for Voldemort. I took Brian Percy, the D tackle from Clemson. Like I said before, it's the guy that's kind of moving up and down boards. But to me, I think he gives you the best of both worlds, inside outside. I think he really excels inside a D tackle, especially his pass rush capacity. I think the Texans need best players that can play multiple positions right now to really get the best thing for them. For me, I think Paris Johnson was definitely in play to replace get a new right tackle and possibly left tackle in the future. But other than that, I'm really not in love with anything else. I don't think they're going to bring in a defensive head coach or second corner at this high up pick. Isn't happening. At least Brzee fills multiple holes for you on first and second down, and then he could switch on third down whenever needed. I think he could play at 4-3 and 3-4 and multiple. So I think he's the right pick.
Yeah. Brzee, to me, I think Clemson played him too much at one tech,
Yeah.
where like I don't think that that's his best position. I think a three tech where he can get after the quarterback is definitely a much better position. But size
No,
wise, like it makes sense that they'd toss him at one tech, right? Because he's got the length and he can
Yeah,
kind of set the tone in the run game and kind of drive centers back. But
I
get
think
him in a
he's
gap, man.
in a 4-3. I think he could play a really good two tech.
Hmm.
So where he's doing a little bit of that, but he could also still get to the outside from there,
Yeah.
and he can still rip through. But being just a head up one tech is just you're basically begging to get double or triple teams every play, which he still probably will for the Texans. So whatever, but like to get the most out of him, you need to be able to move him, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, the Texans still have one of my favorite players in Jonathan Grenard. So, um,
Yeah, which is why I didn't take an edge.
yeah, big facts. All right, next pick. The Jets are
Yeah,
taking
took them all.
Paris Johnson Jr. from Ohio State. This seems to be one of the favorite picks in every mock draft. I think this is like the most player to team comp I've seen in NFL mock draft database. Shout out them. They have a really awesome simulator, but they need an offensive tackle because Mekhi Becton right now is still a big question mark coming off 2 injuries in his young career. He is thinned out. It seems like he's focused up, but that doesn't absolve them from needing another tackle. I think your best option is you move Elijah Vera Tucker consistently inside. He has played at tackle in the NFL and in college, and he did fine. But I think their best combination of offensive linemen includes him at guard. So I think you put Paris Johnson at left tackle, or maybe you bump him to right and then let Mekhi take the left tackle if he's in shape. I don't think it matters. They need an offensive tackle to protect whoever their new quarterback is.
Yeah, and they're going the veteran route as well. And you have the running backs, you have the receivers, in my opinion. You kind of paid 2 free agent tight ends, and you drafted Rucker, so I think you're good there. Defense is young and getting better by the day, and you can kind of, in my opinion, you could really get Paris Johnson, fill multiple needs possibly on the offensive line, make sure you have your best 5 out there for whatever guy you bring in, and then you could focus the rest of the picks on defense, which really doesn't need it, but you still can do it. So I really do think this is a good launching point, and I think this is how their draft should definitely start.
Yeah. That said, I considered going the best safety prospect in this draft here just to make it
Everyone
OP.
is putting Brian Branch there, and Jets people hate it, and
I
I
know.
love that more.
Well, a
But
first round safety to them is just Jamal Adams. It doesn't matter what
yeah,
happens. It's just
but the safety class is not the best. So at the
it's
top, I'll give Branch love. We'll talk about him in a second. But besides that, it's the next tier, I'd say, and then some guys that are a lot of question marks, which safety will be really late in the process. So I feel comfortable saying that now, giving a little bit
for sure.
some talk to that. But Patriots at 14. This is a big Brian Branch spot, in my opinion.
Dude,
But
him
I
and
didn't do
Duggar
that.
together.
What?
Him and Duggar together is just not fair. You
Yeah,
can't do
and
it.
it's replacing McCourty for the future. McCourty also might retire. Branch can play nickel corner and a couple other things, but I didn't go him. uh, I went Quentin Johnson. I
I'm into
I
it.
I'm into it. He does things that the Patriots offense doesn't have, and he can get open deep, and he's a bigger body guy that also wins quick and does a lot of gadgety stuff. So I think he's a good moving piece for them. You have Bill O'Brien coming in as offensive coordinator. I think he can really use him to the best of his abilities. Honestly, a lot like Jameson Williams at Alabama. I think that's your blueprint for Quentin Johnston for this team. Um, the issue is Daniel Jeremiah scared me because I really don't know how the league is evaluating these top 3 receivers, and it seems like Johnson is not going to be placed in the first round as of right now.
Was he not in his first
He
round
was
mock?
not. He was not in the first round. Uh, which, yeah, that face, yes. So if it's not Quentin Johnson and it's a receiver, I think it's Jordan Addison.
Yeah.
Just want that pointed out. But I want Johnson because I think he diversifies this offense, and that's what this offense really fucking needs. And just an offensive coordinator, which they got now.
Yeah. I think the Bill O'Brien hire, we didn't talk about it, but I think that's actually really good for both Alabama and the Patriots because I think Alabama was kind of done with him after this last year and
Yeah,
how bad.
he was Mac Jones coordinator. They already they know how the best work with each other, and I think they can really do a lot of good. So,
Yeah.
which as long as you're not just throwing 20 screens a game, I think you're winning that battle. Yeah.
Also, Tyquan Thornton on the other side, so you have 2 field stretchers just going nuts,
You do have to re-sign Jacoby,
which might not
but
happen,
I think
but
it'll happen. But I think they might try and get out of Johnny Smith and maybe Hunter.
yeah.
I don't know with all that. But either way, I think wide receiver here fits. But I do want to say corner, safety, offensive line. Like there's multiple things that can work for the Patriots. Honestly, no one wants to
BPA.
see it, but Bajan works.
It does. It really
It's just
does.
yeah.
Jameer Gibbs, Bill O'Brien wants
No,
him over Bajan.
no, no,
That's
no,
not gonna
no,
happen.
no, no.
Um,
Never over Bajan.
Facts.
He's the
Okay.
golden god.
I'm gonna go with the Packers here at 15, and this is where I have Brian Branch coming off, safety out of Alabama. Brian Branch is a top 5 player in this class for me. I think he is one of the better safety prospects I've studied since we started doing this. Just the versatility that he plays with. He can run fit as well as any safety I've watched in a while, but he can also play corner at a cornerback. Like he plays nickel corner as well as corners. And that's pretty remarkable for a safety. And he did it consistently. He played outside corner at times. He was the star in Saban's defense, which is star is actually a position in the defense where he is close to the line of scrimmage. He does make a lot of the checks and calls and things like that. Very highly intelligent football player. And the Packers really they need a safety. They went back to Darnell Savage. He had a bit of a late season renaissance, but I think that Amos is getting old. Savage has been inconsistent. You just shore up that position a little bit.
Yeah, I as a pure safety, I think it works. I hate it because they have 3 corners that they're going to use, so he'll never be nickel. But
It's
I
true.
get it, unless
That's true.
it's like dime or whatever. But
He could
yeah,
also be potentially better than like Douglas in the nickel.
he might
Potentially.
be. I do think he can pretty much step in year 1, year 2, and be Chauncey Gardner Johnson. I think
Yeah.
that's the right player comp for right now. At least I do think he has the potential to be a little bit better. But Chauncey's great in the box. He's good at over the top and center field coverage, and he is always rotated in his nickel corner. I think that's the type of guy you're going with, and he was a highly valued trade commodity for the Eagles this year, and he might come up big in the next 2 weeks. So
Yeah.
I think that next 3 weeks, I guess. But yeah, so that's the type of impact we're looking for off the top, and that's why it's like Packers. Maybe it doesn't give you as much, but maybe not off the top. But
Yeah.
eventually it will. So 16 Commanders, just to really spite the Steelers. I gave them Joey Porter Jr. so the Steelers couldn't get him. But in reality, the corner from Penn State, just for that, he. I I had Gonzalez. I said he's my cornerback 1 right now. I don't know who's going to be the cornerback 1 to end this. I don't think it's going to be Joey Porter Jr., but I think he's going to be that second tier or in the same tier as the 1, I guess. But he is very good. Obviously, there's a Steelers connection with his dad playing there, but I do think the Commanders need so much help at corner. I don't care who it is. I don't care if they draft 2, but they need corner really, really bad. And they've needed corner for a long time as well. And I think they finally addressed it here with Joey Porter Jr. I don't know if he's your 1 of the future, but I know he's on the field for the future.
Yeah. I love Joey Porter Jr.'s game. He's going to be in my first tier no matter what. I don't know where it'll all shake out. Right now, he's my
Yeah,
2.
I'd say he's in the first tier of 3,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
3 in the first tier.
Yeah, for sure.
Clarify.
Very good player. I think his versatility too is what the Commanders need. So, and next pick, because you went that direction, which by the way, I would have gone Joey Porter Jr. with that pick, of course, with the connection, but the Steelers are picking here at 17, and I want to put out there that we did this mock. We did
We
this
did this like last
last
Monday.
week. Last week we did it, and then it came out that Kenny Pickett would love to have Jordan Addison back, because that was his Heisman level season. So I'm giving him Jordan Addison, wide receiver out of now USC. He played with Kenny Pickett at Pitt. The Steelers outside, so they have Pickens, they have Deontay Johnson. They don't have an offensive coordinator, so that's the part here that sucks. But I think when your quarterback that you have now invested a first round pick in that is supposedly your quarterback of the future, which I have my doubts, um, when he says, "Hey, I want Jordan Addison," and you look around the league and you see a ton of dudes that have their number one receiver from college and they're succeeding, I think you have to consider it. And the Steelers don't have depth behind Pickens and Deontay, and so
Who did? Who else did they draft last year? They drafted
uh,
another like
the little
Slav
guy,
note.
the
Yeah,
little guy, forget his name off the top of my head.
yeah. He didn't
Um,
play much. So, but yeah, I just remember we're like, okay, well, that's I mean, pretty
Yeah, I
good.
wish I wish I remembered his name. Starts with a C. I know that.
That's not fucking helpful.
Yeah.
Uh,
But Addison does bring them a different type of receiver too, which I think they need something like that. So
I don't necessarily think he brings them a different type of receiver fully. I think I think he's Deontay
I think he's
in this
Deontay.
scheme.
Yeah.
Don't you fucking say plus. I will leave if you disrespect my boy.
Listen, here's my thing. So I saw a stat today. The Steelers ran like like comeback routes or curls, things like that, an absurd amount of time this year. Like
Yeah,
stuff that is
Kenny
it's
sucks.
Yeah, it's the opposite of like the 49ers offense that relies on yards after the catch, which is Deontay's bag. That's kind of Addison's bag too. He is fast. He's a good separator. Um, Deontay is too. Pickens isn't. So that's kind of where I was thinking, I guess. But I don't know,
Yeah,
man. This was a fun pick. I
it's a
had
fun
fun.
pick. Real kicking in the nads to my Deontay love. But I will
Yeah,
say like Deontay, I believe he signed a 3-year extension just last year, so he's got 2 years left on that. I don't know if they extend him past then. I do think it's a bit early to replace him with a first round pick, but
that's fair.
they went Pickens last year to replace Claypool real quick, so who knows? Um, but
Yeah.
I don't think anyone on this podcast ever will disrespect a USC receiver because we seem to absolutely love him. And I think Addison really is in contention to be the wide receiver one off the board and wide receiver one for our rankings. He's definitely very talented, so he will fit in well if the ball can get to the receivers.
Yeah, for sure.
Uh, 18 here, Lions get a corner that they are going to fucking love. I'm sorry, I do this a lot. Devin Witherspoon, cornerback, Illinois, is a very, very vocal leader on the defense. I think they really, really need that in that secondary, especially in that corner room. Um, I think they have talent in the corner room for sure, but I do think getting your number one of the future, which I have some doubts that Witherspoon will be able to be like talent wise a full number one for like a lockdown outside, but he's definitely going to step up to the challenge to do so. And I think that's why he's going to keep skyrocketing up boards. We talked about that off air. But he is going to keep rising because he's going to nail that interview process. He's going to nail the board work. He's going to, and he has good tape to back it up. And there's not going to be a phone call with a coach that isn't loving him at Illinois. So I do think he is going to keep skyrocketing up boards. I'm not sure he's at this pick for the Lions when we're there.
So I was
I
gonna
don't
say.
think he gets past 16. In reality, I think someone might trade up for him. Honestly,
I think if the Lions want him, either they have to like take this pick and move up somewhere in the 8 to 12 range. I actually think that I think he's going to be a top 10 pick with everything I've been seeing, and I get it. He's my CB1 right now. That said, from like his work waiting on stems on the stem of his wide receiver that he's covering, concerning, just super strange that he just kind of stands there and then he waits and then he just jumps the route, but he jumps it every single time. He like and he's super super physical at the top of a break, and I don't understand. I've never watched a corner that plays quite like him, I don't think.
I he's a weird watch. Simply because of those predictions. Um, I don't know if he is a quarterback level tape watcher. um,
He
or
has
he's
to
just
be.
guessing, or he's just
Yeah.
guessing. Because Trayvon Diggs just guesses. I can tell
Yep.
you that.
For sure.
And he leads leagues in picks most of the time. I think he could do the same thing for the Lions here, by the way. Um,
He's got
but
good
I
ball
think
skills
I
too.
think he puts in the work, and I just think he is understanding what the passing game is trying to do, and he's jumping routes. Does he have the best hands of the class at corner? I don't think so. So the ball skills are gonna knock him a bit, but he's got good enough hands to make the play. He's made plenty of plays, but he's gonna break it up at worst case, I think. But there is gonna be plays where he gets toasted because he gambled.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That's the thing. It's a different level at the next.
Yep.
So, I mean, clearly,
It's
obviously, he's
not
going up to the
it's,
NFL.
it's not really a division I like gambling, especially against
No.
one team.
Yeah, for sure. But I love this pick. I think if the Lions want him, they either have to trade up or take him at 6, and
I,
I think
I
there's a
think
chance they take
I
him at
think
6.
him I think them taking a corner at 9 with a trade back with the Panthers to get ahead of the Raiders for a quarterback. I think that's something that makes sense to go either him or Gonzalez
Yeah,
instead of Edge necessarily there. Because I think if Wilson's there, I think the Falcons might go him over a
yeah,
tackle or corner. So, but the Falcons also might take him because Terrell isn't really that type of corner. Uh, so it would give you could test the other side, but it'll probably get picked, or you could go at her one that didn't play as well this last year.
yeah, yeah. Very true. All right. Next pick, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I don't know what to do with them. They
Uh,
have
offensive line, corner, edge.
yeah. Yeah, see, edge is where like I hesitate a bit because Tryon Shoyinka, not enough time to really evaluate if he's going to be a dude. I was low on him, and they took him in the first. Obviously, the athletic tools were there, um, but he hasn't really developed. They took Logan
Logan Hall.
Hall, almost called him Logan Wilson. That's the linebacker for the Bengals. Logan Hall, and I didn't like him all that much either. He was a tweener, and neither of them really had a good year. I think that's a good option here for them, but I think you bank on them developing. I went with Osiris Torrance, the offensive guard out of Florida. He's a top 10 player for me in this class, positional value set aside, I guess, but just a very, very powerful dude that really holds up in pass protection. They're going to need to protect, but they also need to figure out their running game because I don't think that obviously Byron Leftwich is out, someone new's coming in, but I think that they really need to figure out their running game with Fournette still there next year, Rashad White there. Osiris Torrance helps that. Um,
Yeah,
and he protects whoever the new quarterback is. So
they had a massive gap with Ali Marpet gone, and they really couldn't get much there. It really affected them all year. I think this is the best pick for them, especially where they're sitting at the draft here, because you're probably reaching for the second tier of corner. You're definitely reaching for second, third tier of edge. Um, so getting a top tier there, Michael Mayer, I think makes some sense as well. Um, but again, we're getting a different offensive coordinator, so
they also
I
seem to like Otten quite a bit.
well they do, but it's
He's their
just
only tight end right now,
yeah.
like past this year.
So it's a weird situation. Like you said, with I don't know if Fournette's under contract, but like Bajan makes sense. But if you couldn't run the ball last year, you might as well start with the all line first and get a running back maybe next year instead or later in the draft because this is a deep running back class. So I think Torrance is by far the best pick from how the board fell.
Yeah, cool.
Uh, 20 Seahawks get Cam Smith, the corner from South Carolina for me. Definitely in the second tier of corners. I think this is like anywhere from like a 2 to 4 cornerback grouping. I just think he gives you a little bit more upside, and they're a weird team because I know they like athletic freaks. You really have Woolen as your one corner on the outside. Okay. And I think Kobe Bryant can be a better used slot corner. So you
R.I.P.
really need to find different spelling,
I know.
different talent. Um, really need to find the secondary corner on the outside. And I think Cam Smith could really fill that role for you day one. And their secondary has been up and down at different times. And I think he can help solidify it for the future, especially after you already got Jalen Carter to help shore up the middle to start and really help out your linebacking core to get free a little bit more. I think this is the best play here while you're still figuring out edge rushers to strengthen the secondary.
Yeah. I have my thoughts on Cam Smith, but I want to watch a little bit more before I finalize
Yeah,
them.
like I
I'm
said, scattershot. They're still
for
gonna
sure.
carve out the hard edges of all these guys, but
And he was a guy I really liked heading into the offseason, but assuming some development, and I'm not certain that it happened this year.
I th- I think he thinks he's J.C. Horn, but he's not.
Right. Yeah. And I think the problem is I don't think he's that athlete.
He's not that size.
And that's also part of it. And I don't even think he's as fast, but I know he's not as fast actually. JC ran a crazy 40. Like
Yeah,
JC's insane. You mentioned they just got Jalen Carter. The next pick, another Jalen potentially for the Chargers. Jalen Hyatt has been a popular mock pick here. I'm not going that direction. I don't think Jalen Hyatt's going to be a first rounder. I don't know, but
on the board for the well, first of all, 21st pick is the Dolphins, but they don't have a pick, so
true. Yeah,
but I'm not sure if the draft is going to consider that the 21st pick or if they're just going to say the Chargers are the 21st, but I just wanted to state that
yeah,
for
good
now.
call.
But for the board, I mean, Jackson Smith and Jigba makes the most sense if they're picking a receiver, just because I think he
Right.
can work with what they have now. But if they want to get out of Keenan Allen this year after the injuries and underperforming because of said injuries, he makes the most sense to really make sure the offense doesn't skip a beat. But
Yeah. That's correct. And instead, I gave them a receiver in a different form in Bijan Robinson, the running back out of Texas. I think I do this every year. Randy pointed it out. I made a joke like, "You're going to be shocked at my next pick," and Randy goes, "I'm not shocked. You do this all the time." Um, but there's a lot of reason to believe that the Chargers will do something like this, especially they go up 27-0 in the playoffs. Brandon Staley's still there. Joe Lombardi is not. They're going to have a new offensive coordinator that very much so impacts this pick. But you go up 27-0, you can't run the ball and you don't run the ball. Austin Eckler, very good running back, nice pass catcher. Still think he has a couple years maybe left. Maybe he's getting to an old age. Bijan Robinson gives you kind of the best of both worlds. If you need to line up Bijan at wide receiver, he can do that. He did that at Texas. If you need to give him 25 carries in a game, he can handle that workload. If you need to just pound the ball down someone's throats, you can do that. Bijan Robinson is a top 5 talent in this class. Positional value aside, I don't know where this kid's going to go. I don't know how the NFL is going to value him, but I know that if Saquon went 3, I could see him going as early as top 10, and I could also see him fall into a team like the Chargers here.
for fantasy, I hate it.
Me too, but I don't care. He'd still be my 101. I'll throw that out there.
I would do the same.
Eckler
It's
would
a
be
weird
toast, I think, actually.
it's a weird thing. Simply because like what you're talking about is they need a guy that can still catch passes, but the specific situation of the playoff game is they're up and they need to grind the clock more. And you could still have Eckler do the pass catching role. This is just such a deep running back class that you can get a bruiser that can catch a pass later. That
Yeah,
it seems like a waste of a pick, but it's hard to say that when it's the best running back we've seen
bingo. Since
besides.
Saquon.
I mean, Saquon's the only comparable, really. So, uh, and yeah, that does include Jonathan Taylor for people that are
Yeah,
asking. Jonathan Taylor didn't really catch the ball in college, so he's not going to measure up. Just saying.
yeah. He also fumbled a lot. Okay, go ahead. Next pick.
Ravens, speaking of Jackson Smith and Jigba, I went there. This is a weird eval simply because I don't know. I mean, in theory, Lamar's back. Um, yeah, exactly. Charbonnet.
Yeah.
Sorry for people watching.
Yeah.
David Rowe. Sharps. Yeah, he'd be a great fit there. But I get the no wide receivers to the Ravens. I know it's not a position they necessarily value, but I think it is very obvious that they have no help besides Bateman. And I do think Robinson stepped up in a few games that he was definitely needed. But I mean, even Andrews played terribly this year down the stretch. They're drafting a receiver this year, in my opinion, the Ravens.
for sure.
And with Bajan off the board, it really like takes a sail out of like making a splash pick in this round. There are some other needs, obviously a corner, but again, we've had enough corners come off the board to where you're getting that second, third tier of corner. I'd rather get a first year receiver and really make a big weakness on my team less of a weakness by far, and really encourage like Lamar coming back, getting another weapon that can actually catch the ball short and deep, along with Bateman. Yeah, you could just do a two receiver set then with all the tight ends you want and run the ball. And yeah, he's not going to be, the biggest fantasy weapon there, because no receiver really will be. But I do think it changes a bit, and I think Lamar has grown as a pocket passer enough to where I don't know if he can have two wide receivers that are top 15 or top 20, but he could definitely have one. So
Yeah. I have to remember too, Greg Roman's gone. So this offense
yes.
probably looks a lot different next year, and they need pieces around Lamar. Because I don't think Lamar comes back if they don't put pieces around him. So I love this pick. I will be mocking wide receiver to the Ravens in almost every mock that I do. I'll just throw that out
Now,
there, whether it's him or not.
yeah, depending on how you restructure cap, it's also a place where they could, trade a second round for D Hop, and then this is an irrelevant pick because we wouldn't make this pick then. But
Yeah,
just saying.
very true. All right, 23 overall. The Vikings had a lot of needs. Last year they took Andrew Booth. I think they have a need at edge rusher, but we've had quite a few go thus far. I think there's that clear tier at the top, and then you kind of wait. I think that would be a good pick here, but I went with Keely Ringo, the corner out of Georgia. That said, you mentioned Daniel Jeremiah. Keely Ringo did not go in Jeremiah's first mock either, and I think that there's good reason for that. I don't think he has first round tape, but I think after we see how incredibly athletic he is, I think he's going to get that boost back up into the first round, but people will still be hesitant. The Vikings need dudes in the secondary. They don't have much. Even Patrick Peterson kind of struggled down the stretch. Andrew Booth, I think, will still be good, but that's a good corner duo either way. So,
Yeah, I think it's a decent fit where they have a couple other bodies there, and he doesn't have to be necessarily the one off the bat as well. So I think that can definitely help. He's got some weird tape, like you said. I do think more elite route runners definitely gave him way more fits. And to be fair, those guys give corners fits no matter what. But more of a big body one, he pretty much dominated a lot of the time. So I do think he has enough, physical traits and then enough tape on certain levels to definitely get to the back end of the first year. And Vikings are a team, like you said, are very desperate on defense. I do think we could see an entirely different Vikings defense this year. They do have some cap issues, and I mean they could clear out the linebacking room, they could clear out the D line room, really, and
they probably should.
they could clear out Harrison Smith. Like a lot of this defense could be changing and getting. I think they're going to have to go defense here for sure, especially with how the wide receivers went. I think you can give Osborne an increased role and just decrease Thielen to the wide receiver 3 or even wide receiver 4 with Hawkinson and still be just fine in offense. So
Yeah.
focus on defense is a big thing for them.
Yeah, for sure.
Jaguars 24, another weird, pick. I think cornerback 2 is a big thing for them. I do think
Tyson,
edge rusher with some versatility is a big thing. What was that? Sorry.
sorry, I was just gonna say Tyson Campbell played really well this year.
Yeah, I think he's their one,
For
but
sure. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
they definitely need a 2. I don't think they have that in the building right now. So,
Right.
uh, a lot of people can say wide receiver. If you add in Calvin Ridley, there's just no space anymore. I do
No.
think Marvin Jones is gone, but I think just Ridley replaces that. and there's just not a lot of space left for receiver. There is a space for receiving tight end. Ironically, we talked about the Jaguars in like a Friday Fix last year where they had all this money. And they overspent for Kirk, but they had to get someone in the building. They are, I think, like 24 million over the cap right now for this year. So I'm sure there's going to be restructures. I don't think they're going to be over cap or anything. But guys like Evan Ingram, who were brought in for 1 year, 9 million, and played really well, is he taking a cheaper deal to stay, or is he going somewhere else for the same amount of money? He goes somewhere else for the same amount of money. I think even if you bring him back for another 1 year deal, bringing a guy in like Michael Mayer is a better thing because while they do have Dan Arnold, Michael Mayer is way better of a, he's a way better combination tight end. He's the best tight end in this draft for me. He's a good enough blocker. I don't think he's elite there, but he's definitely an elite pass catcher. And I think he's a true inline tight end that can also split out. And there's definitely different types of tight ends in this class, which is different than most years. So, but I think Mayer fits, and you get to pair him with Lawrence for the future, and it just makes the most sense especially with how the board fell.
Yeah, for sure. This tight end class is pretty legit. I'm not done evaluating all of them yet, but a lot of people have been mocking 3 tight ends in the first this year thus far. So worth noting. And we got 2 in here, but stay tuned for that. Next pick, the New York Giants. I had them taking Trenton Simpson, the linebacker out of Clemson. I'm actually kind of low on this kid. I think that some of his game will translate, and some of it I'm concerned that he has to play like will linebacker. I don't know if he has the play strength to kind of play in a Mike role. And my concern is that the Giants already kind of have that spot filled, and they kind of just need those inside linebackers in their scheme. So I thought about moving this pick to Drew Sanders, the linebacker out of Arkansas. So just a caveat here, but Trenton Simpson, on a coverage standpoint, one of the better linebackers in the class for sure. He's going to be able to, match up with tight ends. And I think in that division, that will be key. And so I think he's a good fit to just add another weapon to their defense. Wide receiver is a popular pick. I know. I think they're
Top
going to
three
get
gone.
What's that?
Top 3 gone with how this
Exactly.
went. It does sound like the receivers aren't going to be really coming off the board till the 20s. So I
Yeah.
think that definitely plays into the hand of the Giants, who really could do with drafting like 3 receivers and signing one. And their cap's going to be weird because we have to see what they pay for Saquon and Daniel Jones, and then we can move on. But because they are bringing both back, and we'll figure it out past then.
I don't believe they actually bring them both back. I think
I
it's a
do.
facade. I think they get one of them done. I don't think Daniel Jones wants to be back, man. I don't know. I don't know if I'm reading too much
I
into that comment that he
I
was
think
like,
before this year, yeah, but I think Dable really kind of gave him hope again. And I think he's going to stick around and reward that.
maybe.
And if that's the case, I mean, they, bless Isaiah Hodgins and everyone
I
else.
love Hodgins.
Everyone else they had step up this year, but they need a receiver badly. So, but I think you're reaching for one. And following that up, speaking of reaching, Cowboys, Zay Flowers, wide receiver from Boston College. Cowboys really desperately want a wide receiver too. Again, another team, if they can somehow make it work money wise, D Hop is obviously a perfect landing spot. But it's just not. They were so hindered by being CeeDee Lamb only at the wide receiver position. Noah Brown stepped up, early. Michael Gallup started to get back along the stretch, and then T.Y. Hilton's getting a bunch more snaps than both of them to end the season. They need wide receiver 2 desperately for this offense really to function, especially now. Like, I'm going into the year saying Tony Pollard's not on this team because with this late injury and such a severe injury, I don't even know if he signs anywhere until the season starts. Uh, so
He can't
he
pass
might come
physical.
back, but it might not be till the second half of the year. So you really need that second target and wide receiver here. And you also have to bring Schultz on a tag. Like, I think wide receiver 2 is a big need for them. I think Zay Flowers might be the best on the board. It's a weird wide receiver 4 spot for me.
Josh Downs, baby. but I get it.
Josh Downs for them makes no sense to me.
I agree.
But uh, there's a few people that make sense to them, and I think Flowers is one of them. I do think he is a talented guy. I think this is one of the better landing spots for him personally,
Yeah.
but I just don't know if pick necessarily makes sense. But this may be a trade back kind of pick as well. But he has been getting first round hype, as through these last couple weeks too. So we'll see when we're done evaluating these guys. But I think he'll probably be wide receiver 4 through 6 for me. So
Yeah. No, I get that. I hope the Cowboys just realize that another year removed from injury, Gallup is probably going to look more like Gallup from before. And I hope they don't do something. They still need receiver, don't get me wrong. But I
they
think
also
you,
need edge and D tackle and corner too, and
yeah,
offensive line probably. It's
they need a lot.
tight end. I mean, there's depending on what you
Yeah,
think of like Ferguson and Hendershot, I guess, and if they're
yeah.
bringing back Schultz, and so there's a few question marks for them, but still.
Yeah, for sure. All right, next pick. The Buffalo Bills. The Bills need a lot more than we thought. I think they need a wide receiver. I think after what just happened with the wide receiver run here, not run, but like just what is left with the board, I'm not super comfortable giving them a wide receiver. So I want Nolan Smith, the edge rusher out of Georgia. I think people are forgetting about him because of his injury towards pec. And so he hasn't played in a while. He is going to smash interviews. He was an extension of the coaching staff throughout Georgia's championship run. They talked about it on the broadcast a ton, but like when he plays, when he is healthy on the field, he plays like that too. He is an undersized dude that can somehow still help in the run at an elite level. Um, Very, very strong player. I think he's got really great bend. He's a guy that I think people are forgetting about right now. They'll come back around once we get to draft season. And the Bills really, really struggled without Von Miller. I think Von does come back. I don't know what type of production we get out of Von, though. So I think you just keep adding to the fronts, and Nolan Smith fits a need for them. So,
Yeah, he's definitely a guy that he's popping more on tape than I expected, especially in
yep.
that defense. So I do think he's going to be rising up boards, and this is about the range for him, sure. But yeah, I think it's a good fit. I think edge rusher is a good fit. I think they went for the cornerback too this last year. I think it's worked out with Elam personally.
Yeah.
Um, if I mean, ideally, I think Brian Branch is their best pick, but he's
Oh, yeah.
well gone at this point.
Yep.
So it's just a weird spot. So getting another edge rusher to help out, and especially because Vaughn, even when he was in, he definitely wasn't an every down player, and I don't think Rousseau definitely is an every down player. So getting a third guy is a smart thing. Um, Broncos, with the pick from the 49ers and possibly the pick for Sean Payton, is Cody Mock, the offensive lineman from North Dakota State. He is kind of listed as a tackle guard. I do think he's going to be more of a guard in the NFL.
Me too.
The Broncos kind of need, pretty much everything. They have some centers with, I believe it's Lloyd Cushenberry there. I do think. Who the hell did they pick last year at guard, man?
Well, a couple years ago was Quinn Miners,
Yeah, Quinn
right?
Miners. Yeah, it wasn't last year. Yeah, Quinn Miners, I think, played really well, especially in the run game this year.
Yeah.
Passing game, it left a little bit to be desired. Getting the guy opposite him, I think, is the biggest thing for them. They have 1.5 tackles, so getting the guy that can kind of play inside outside. I think guard Mock is going to be the best thing for them to really get the best 5 linemen on the field for Russell Wilson and this new offensive system, this new coaching staff. Hopefully, a return of a healthy Javonte Williams. So I think it'll really work out if you get great O line play from this team. I think that's going to be the biggest thing for Russell Wilson's success this next year.
Yeah, for sure. Let's speed round these last four. We're over some time.
Especially because we don't know what order they really be in.
This is true. So the Bengals we have here, I don't think they'd actually be here, and actually it'd flip now based on favorites and how the favorites have flipped with the Mahomes injury. But it doesn't matter because the Chiefs won't be taking this player. Darnell Washington, the tight end out of Georgia. The reason I took him for the Bengals are now experiencing what honestly, their offensive line played really, really well against the Bills this last week, but
Interior.
they also saw what it looks like when decimated. Darnell Washington is an extension of your offensive line. If you line him up next to one of your tackles, you are certain to pick up blitzes. He is the one of the best blocking tight ends I've watched in a very long time, and he's a threat after the catch. Big body, big red zone threat. Not that they necessarily need red zone threats in that offense, but
I think
um,
they
I
kind of
still think they
do.
do. Yeah, I think T. Higgins is that. I think Jamar is really good in that situation. But I also think if you have a third and really fourth with Mixon guy to worry about, you make this offense pretty lethal. He doesn't really fit the type of tight end that they have. Um, but I think that
I
that's
think
the reason
he
they go that direction.
I think he can though. So that's like obviously they have Hurst right now, and I think he's played pretty well in the system. And I think he can stick around and personally be their tight end one. Washington is developing as a pass catcher. I think we would be less concerned about it if he didn't have one of the best, tight end prospects next to him
Yeah.
over the last few years, Bowers. So I do think Washington is a better pass catcher than we're giving him credit for at certain times because he's not asked to do it
Yeah.
necessarily. But I do think he can develop and putting him as your tight end two and more of a package player for the first year or two is going to be amazing for him. And especially in this kind of system to where if he just grows slightly as a pass catcher, Burrow's going to love him.
Yeah.
And I think he can really, this is just another layer of this team being a more explosive offense. I don't think they can really invest back into the offensive line. The interior had some replacements even this week. They have both tackles out, and I think both tackles played pretty poorly this year. Uh, you know, I think getting Washington there to help out in passing plays and different aspects of it to really guarantee, a certain side blocked against, like the Browns with, one of the best edge rushers in the league, or, like the Steelers with one of the best edge rushers in the league. It's kind of a
Yeah.
big thing for them to have better tackle play. And I think Washington guarantees that no matter who's a tackle.
Yeah. For sure. All right.
All right. Chiefs at 30. I went with Lucas Van Ness. Obviously, we talked about Daniel Jeremiah, edge out of Iowa, because I didn't say that. He had him in the top 10. Um, we're not there yet, but
Still
he
won't be.
definitely has good tape. Uh, the issue is there's not a lot. Yes, he wasn't a full time starter, but he was a very talented edge rusher. He played inside a good amount as well and showed really good tape there. I think that really fits the Chiefs system. Obviously, we've seen what they're do with Chris Jones. Obviously, he's not that level, but I think learning from him and being a little bit more inside outside and allowing Jones to be more inside outside because he's able to move inside if they need. Um, the Chiefs definitely need edge help. I mean, they're definitely not a complete team. I think Jameer Gibbs is a popular pick for them, and for a good reason, because I think improving on McKinnon, improving on Clyde right off the bat, and then you could still use Pacheco as more of a grinder. I think that's a good pick as well. But getting a defensive guy here that's a little bit more versatile to plug a couple holes because they really don't have a good edge too, and that's why Jones has played edge a bit more this year. So
Yeah.
getting a guy that can help that kind of rotation makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I just have quick stats. I did a video for him on the Debbie Royale YouTube. 46 pressures, 9 sacks, 155 snaps as a B gap defender, 242 snaps as a 5 tech or wider. So inside out, very much so. 116th in the nation in pass rush grade per PFF, and then a 17.6 missed tackle rate. So some holes to his game. Athletic developmental player that's going to need to work on his toolbox, but I understand the intrigue. I
Yeah,
get it.
it's just if you can have Jones as more of a full time interior pass rusher and then have him developing alongside Karlaftis on the outside, I think that's a good combination to
For sure.
continue this championship window, which is
Yeah.
what they're always just trying to do.
What I don't get is him in the top 10 because he's not a top 10 player.
I don't think he's here at 30.
I agree.
But Karloftis was top 10 until he was 30 to the Chiefs. So
Yeah. Similar players
that's
actually
why I
too.
said it. That's
Similar
why I said
players.
it.
Um, okay. 31 Eagles are picking again. I gave them BJ Ojolari, the edge out of LSU. We had Isaiah Foskey in this mock for a second. I don't think he's a really good fit for the Eagles, but BJ Ojolari has an incredible ability to rush the passer. The Eagles don't have a ton of needs, so they can get designated pass rush type of players where he is only on third downs to start and he is just getting after the quarterback. His play and run defense is not great. That will need to develop, but I do think that some team takes a shot on him. I think he's arguably as good as his brother was coming out, and I loved Aziz Ojolari. So um,
Z's went top a second.
he did, and so that's kind of the same range. I think he's going to be a top 50 pick. I just think the Eagles. I don't think the Eagles are picking a running back. I do want to throw that out there. Um,
I know they're not picking a linebacker.
and I feel pretty confident that they're not taking a running. Like I agree.
I am not confident that they won't take a running back. Uh, and that's Miles Sanders returning. I'm confident they won't. Miles Sanders not returning. I think it's really up in the air because they're clearly drafting one at that point, and you might as well
Well,
take either the one or the two.
see, but in that case, I think they just take Bajan at 10 and call it and just say, okay, that's our guy.
I think they value corner way more though,
I know
and
that's what's
along the
tough to
same lines, they value edge more. So
yeah.
Um, and BJ Osolari gives you, along with Reddick, as more of a guaranteed pass rushing down. Pretty lethal duo, stand up, hand in the dirt, whatever you need. And Reddick, last 3 years is like 40 sacks on three different
Yep.
teams. And he's killing it this year for the Eagles. Getting a guy opposite of him, which they really haven't had all year, really will keep that going. And again, continue this winning window for this
Yep.
team. So
For sure.
I think that's a good pick. And sneaking in the Steelers here for pick 32 to even out the draft, honestly, for the two of us, which we're going to keep doing, I'm sure.
For sure.
Giving the Steelers technically a second first round pick, which is what it is. This is from Chicago for Chase Claypool. Still a bad trade, in my opinion. I think the other second round is a fair game. This one wasn't.
Yeah.
But I gave the Steelers Siaka Ika, the D tackle for Baylor. I think he might go earlier than this, but he was still on the board here. Cameron Hayward's definitely getting older, and
I'd say
they
so.
and they have.
He's really old.
I know he is. They have not really been able to replace losing some people on the interior as well. And Hayward getting banged up this year really just exposed that D tackle room a ton. I think Ika really kind of guarantees that interior for the next couple years while you get the Hayward more replacement. Because I don't think he's necessarily a Hayward replacement. I don't think they really play exactly the same. But the pairing of him and Hayward is going to be really good for a division that runs a dick ton, which is so I think it's a really good fit. You already got a wide receiver. Again, corner, big thing here. Um, there's a couple more corners that I think are going to be the first round conversation, but I'm sure we'll get into them. Other than that, I mean, offensive line, but once you're down here at this point in the draft, we're talking. I mean, I put Mock in here, he's among one of the
Fringe.
better tackles left on
Yeah.
the board at that point, and like I think he's more of a guard. The offensive line, especially tackles, dries up quickly. There's a decent interior class as well. I think this is a bit high. I mean, we saw what happened with Linderbaum last year, who was, a really good prospect, and he kept falling. So,
Yeah. That said, Anton Harrison isn't a super great fit for them, I don't think. But if they did go tackle, I think he's the next one off the board, if I had to guess. But yeah. Um, and that'll do it for our mock draft. We did 33 picks technically. Shout out the Dolphins for making every mock draft super easy this year by cheating and being a scummy organization. And doing all the bad things. But Randy, do you have anything else on this? our content plans have not been officially laid out just yet.
I'm gonna say, did you? Because I did. That's
No,
usually more my bag in this.
this is
We'll kind of look. I know we looked, and it's like I think we said like 13 weeks till the draft.
correct,
Um,
which is terrifying.
so I would predict, starting some shows here. I think we might be able to come back next week with more of like a rookie mock to dive back into more fantasy and give us a little bit more time to, well, let's be honest, give me more time to look at some film. Uh, Fucking Debbie Christian here, making this shit difficult for me.
I'll just
To
making it
catch up.
easier for me.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, but she'll screw up at some point.
This is true. Yeah,
But yeah, I think there might be some Friday fixes coming soon. I'm not 100% sure if they'll be live necessarily, but I think they'll still come out on Friday necessarily, just for the title.
they have to.
I do like them being live, but we'll see with recording. I do have Friday night leagues and stuff now, and then early Saturday, so I have a
And
different job than when we did it
yeah,
last year. It's slightly
we
different.
might be pre-recording the Friday fixes and just toss
Yeah,
them up.
it might
So
be a little bit of mixture as well. So I just put that out there. So it doesn't mean we won't respond to comments, but it might not be us responding to comments on the actual video.
yeah, for sure. That said, next week we'll be on a different day, probably Thursday of next week or something, because I will be at a conference for work
That's
early in the
right.
week. So we'll make it happen. We might pre-record and drop it on Tuesday as well. So who knows? We'll figure that out.
We'll figure that
We
out.
sure will.
If you can't tell, we've literally done no planning. We're just like, you want to do a mock this week? Let's do
Yeah, it's time. It's time to
it.
get back into it. So, thank you guys for watching or listening. If you're listening to the podcast, make sure you subscribe, like, do all the things that you do out there. We appreciate you guys sticking with us too, especially during our hiatuses. We hope you're back watching us. And listening to us. Feel free to let us know how stupid we are about your team's pick. We do enjoy that. And it gives us perspective about, maybe we're not going to pick everything that fans want, but it does. You guys watch your teams probably more than we did this year. So you have a better beat, maybe. You might have a better beat on what the main needs are than even, the research that we've done. So,
Yeah, needs aren't fleshed out now, anyways.
no,
So us picking an edge for your team now, they might sign two edges in free agency. They might not be top tier, but signing two edges means you probably didn't want one in the draft, so we won't give them one in the first round.
right.
There's a few things that'll change. I talked about D Hop being traded multiple times. That's going to be a big impact. I do think it seems like the receivers are falling down the board, so that's going to make a huge impact. Putting defenders higher up in the board. So there's probably gonna be 5 or 6 corners taken in the first. I think there's 5 or 6 edges possibly, because those are two of the three
Which
strongest parts of this class. Running back is a strong top two, and then oh boy, like 12 deep, more of really good talented backs that will get rid of a lot of these guys like Jamal Williams or all these Leonard Fournette. All these guys are gonna be obsolete in a year or two because of this running back class.
Ezekiel Elliott.
Ezekiel Elliott, he's a little bit obsolete now. Tony Pollard, if his leg doesn't fuse properly, I don't know. I'm just there's a lot of there's a lot of really second tier running backs that are in third tier even that are going to be gone because of this class.
Yeah, for sure. It's game changing. But all right, that'll do it for this episode. We got to get out of here.
Yes.
We will be back next week in some form or fashion. Randy, anything else before we bounce?
Nope. Nope.
All right. For Randy Hall, I'm Christian Williams. We'll talk to you guys next week. Later.